learn Japanese history.
We are your navigators, Taro and Hanako.
Hello.
Welcome. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, a really fascinating time in Japanese history, the 10th and 11th centuries.
Right. Sometimes called the Fujiwara period, or maybe Kokufū culture. It's when Japan's own distinct culture really started to blossom.
It really did. And for those of you joining us, maybe from universities overseas, try to picture this. Japan had been heavily influenced by Tang China for centuries, right? But now things start shifting. They begin sort of looking inwards.
So not completely cutting ties, but reevaluating.
Exactly. It wasn't about isolation. It was more about developing a uniquely Japanese sensibility. And that shift, well, it fueled some amazing cultural expressions we'll explore.
Okay, so let's start with that shift away from Tang China.
Yeah.
You mentioned the mission stopped. How significant was that, really?
It was pretty huge, actually, stopping those official missions. I mean, trade and informal contact continued, but ending the official exchange. It removed that constant dominant model of Tang culture.
So it gave Japan some breathing room, culturally speaking.
Precisely. It created space for Japanese thought, Japanese aesthetics, Japanese consciousness to be valued on its own terms, to develop more independently.
Okay, got it. Not isolation, but internal focus.
Right. And that fertile ground, you really see it bloom in literature first.
Absolutely. Kana literature. This is where it really takes off. Now, for anyone maybe new to this, what exactly was kana? Why was it such a big deal?
Okay, so kana, you have hiragana and katakana. They are phonetic scripts, syllabaries, really.
Unlike kanji, the Chinese characters they had been using.
Exactly. Kanji carry meaning in each character. Kana just represents sounds, Japanese sounds.
Which means you could write Japanese much more freely, express nuances.
You got it. It unlocked this ability to express Japanese emotions, Japanese ways of thinking, much more directly and fluidly than wrestling with Chinese characters allowed.
And there's that amazing sake cup find in Toyama, right, from the 9th century.
Oh, yeah. That's incredible. Kusagana, sort of grass script, a precursor to hiragana.
Finding characters like naneha on something like a cup, it shows this wasn't just an elite thing, it was spreading.
It really does. It's the oldest example we have, tangible proof of this shift happening. It's like seeing the foundations being laid.
So with this new tool, this kana script, what kind of literature starts popping up?
Well, waka poetry gets a massive boost. You have the Kokin Wakashu, compiled around 905.
The first imperial anthology, put together by Kino Tsurayuki and others.
That's the one. And it's just exquisite. It captures these really subtle emotions, very sophisticated techniques. It became like the model for waka for centuries.
Wow. But it wasn't only poetry, was it? New forms started appearing too.
No, not at all. This is when we see the rise of the monogatari, the tale, or narrative story, and the Nikki, the diary.
Kino Tsurayuki again, with Itosa Nikki. His diary about heading back to Kyoto.
Yep, that's considered the real start of diary literature in Japanese. It's quite personal, recounting his journey, using kana, by the way, pretending to be a woman writing it.
Interesting. And the Monogatari. This leads to some really famous works.
Oh, definitely. It's seen as the golden age. You start with simpler things, like The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter.
And then you get to the absolute peak, The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu.
Genji, yeah. I mean, what can you say? It's monumental.
What makes it so central to understanding this Kokufū culture?
It's just incredibly rich. It paints this detailed, nuanced picture of court life, the love affairs, the politics, the emotions, the aesthetics, all interwoven with nature in this really beautiful way.
It delves deep into psychology, doesn't it?
Absolutely. For its time, it's remarkably insightful about human feelings and relationships. It gives us this unparalleled window into the aristocratic world of the Heian period.
And then there's Sei Shonagon, her pillow book, the Makura no Soshi. Very different from Genji.
Totally different, but just as fascinating. The pillow book isn't a single narrative. It's lists, observations, anecdotes, witty remarks.
Almost like a blog, centuries ahead of its time.
Kind of, yeah. She's sharp, sometimes quite funny, sometimes poignant. She observes court life, nature, little moments. It's this vivid, personal, and very female perspective.
It's striking how both Genji and the pillow book, these cornerstones, were written by women. Court ladies, mostly.
Yes, and that's tied into the politics of the time.
How so?
Well, powerful nobles, especially the Fujiwara clan, wanted influence at court. A key strategy was to have their daughters marry the emperor and produce an heir.
Ah, the classic path to power through marriage.
Right. So these noble daughters would enter court service, often becoming empresses or consorts, and they brought with them talented, educated ladies-in-waiting, like Murasaki Shikibu and Sei Shonagon.
And these ladies-in-waiting had the time, the education, and maybe the need for an outlet. So they wrote.
Exactly. It created these environments, these literary salons almost, within the court.
Which brings us to the idea of rivalries, maybe, especially between the circles of different empresses.
Oh, for sure. During Emperor Ichiyo's reign, this was particularly noticeable. You had Empress Tishi, who was the daughter of Fujiwara no Michitaka.
And Sei Shonagon served her.
Correct. Teishi's salon was known for being lively, witty, appreciating classical knowledge. Sei Shonagon really embodied that.
Okay, and the other side?
Then you had Empress Shoshi. She was the daughter of Fujiwara no Michinaga, Michitaka's political rival, and eventually the most powerful figure.
And Murasaki Shikibu served Shoshi.
Right. Shoshi's salon was perhaps seen as a bit more serious, more focused on literary depth. Murasaki was known to be more reserved, introspective, deeply talented.
And didn't Murasaki actually criticize Sei Shonagon in her own diary?
She did, yes. In the Murasaki Shikibu diary, she makes some pretty pointed remarks about Sei Shonagon. Finds her a bit flashy, maybe lacking in depth, too eager to show off her knowledge.
Wow, so real tension there.
Well, it's hard to say definitively how personal it was, but certainly different styles, different patrons. And as Empress Shoshi's influence grew, partly because Teishi's family fell from power, you can imagine some professional, maybe even emotional friction between these two literary giants.
It really paints a picture of that court environment.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. Another huge current in this era was religion, specifically the spread of Pure Land Buddhism.
Yes, Jodo Buddhism, very important.
Yep.
But to understand its appeal, you need the context.
Which was?
Well, Japan already had this deep-rooted blend of Shinto and Buddhism called Shinbutsu Shugo.
The idea that Shinto kami could be manifestations of Buddhas. Hanji Sajaku.
Exactly that theory. Plus, Buddhist temples were becoming major landowners, often incorporating local kami as protectors.
Right.
And you had unique developments like Shugendo, mountain asceticism, mixing Buddhism, Shinto, even Taoist ideas. So it was already complex.
Okay, so a mixed religious landscape. What made Pure Land Buddhism stand out then?
A big factor was this idea of Mappo, the latter day of the law.
The age of decline.
Right. The belief, based on some Buddhist scriptures, that about 2,000 years after the Buddha's passing, his teachings would become corrupted, society would degenerate, and achieving enlightenment, the old ways would become almost impossible.
And people felt they were in that time.
Many did. There was a calculation that the year 1052 marked the start of Mappo. This created a lot of anxiety, a sense of impending doom, you know?
Understandable. So people were looking for an easier path.
Pretty much. And Pure Land Buddhism offered that. The promise wasn't enlightenment in this degenerate world, but rebirth in the Pure Land, the Western paradise of Amida Buddha.
And how did you get there?
Through faith in Amida, and, crucially, by reciting his name, the Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu.
A simple practice, accessible to everyone.
Very much so. Figures like Kuya, the market saint, traveled around, chanting the Nembutsu, dancing, spreading the faith among ordinary people.
And there were more scholarly proponents, too.
Definitely. Genshin, a Tendai monk, wrote the Ojo-yoshu, Essentials of Rebirth. It vividly described the horrors of hell and the bliss of the Pure Land, arguing that Nembutsu was the most effective practice in the age of Mappo. It was hugely influential.
And we can still see the impact of this faith today, right?
Yep.
In art.
Oh, absolutely. Think of the famous statue of Kuya at Rokuhara Mitsuji in Kyoto, with the little Buddhas coming out of his mouth, representing the chant.
Right. And temples dedicated to Amida.
Yes. Like the statue of Amida Nyorai at Hokkaiji. This devotion wasn't just for commoners either.
No. Even the powerful Fujiwara.
Absolutely. Fujiwara no Michinaga himself, the guy pulling the strings behind the throne, made a pilgrimage to Mount Kimpu in 1007.
And he buried sutras there. I read about that in his diary, the Mido Kenpai Kuki.
That's right. A very pious act. And incredibly, that burial offering, or one just like it, was found centuries later.
The sutra container, the Kyozutsu.
Yes! Discovered apparently in 1691, it's this beautiful bronze cylinder. It even has the craftsman's name, Chakusinkin, and the Siddham script for Namu Myoho Renshikyo.
And the inscription.
Over 500 characters, including the date 1007 and Mikanaga's own name. It's the oldest dated Kyozutsu known, a national treasure. It's an amazing direct link back to his personal faith.
Wow, that really brings history alive.
Ew.
Okay, so this Pure Land belief, How did it shape the broader art and architecture?
Massively. The most obvious impact was the building of Amida-do halls, halls specifically designed to house statues of Amida Buddha, often meant to replicate the Pure Land itself.
Ikinaga built one, Hojuji, though it's gone now.
Correct. But his son, Yorimichi, converted his villa in Uji into the Byodo-in Temple and its Phoenix Hall. Well, that's the iconic image of this era's architecture.
It's stunning. Designed to look like paradise, right?
Exactly. Completed in 1053, just after Mappo supposedly began. It sits by a pond. The wings look like they're about to take flight. It's meant to evoke Amida's palace in the Pure Land.
And inside.
Inside is the famous Amida statue by the master sculptor Jocho. And surrounding it, on the walls and doors, are paintings and smaller sculptures depicting the Raigo.
The welcoming descent. Amida coming down to greet the dying believer.
Precisely. These beautiful images show Amida and bodhisattvas on clouds coming to take the faithful soul back to the Pure Land.
And Jocho, the sculptor, he had a new technique, didn't he?
Yes, very important. Yasegi-zukuri, joined wood construction.
So not carving from one single giant block of wood.
Right. He'd carve sections head, torso, arms separately, then join them together. This allowed for bigger statues, it was more efficient, and crucially, it allowed for a division of labor. Workshops could produce statues more quickly.
Meeting the demand fueled by Pure Land faith.
Exactly. And paintings of the Reigo also became incredibly popular, visual reassurances of salvation.
Okay, moving beyond the purely religious, what about how the aristocrats lived? Their houses.
They developed a distinct style called Shinden-zukuri. These were estates, often with a central hall, Shinden, facing south onto a garden or pond.
What were they like visually?
Think natural wood, often unpainted. Elegant cypress bark roofs. Raised wooden floors because Japanese life traditionally involved sitting on the floor. And buildings were connected by covered walkways, open and airy.
And the interiors. Less Chinese influence there, too.
Definitely. You see the use of Yamato-e Japanese-style paintings often on folding screens, bayobu, or sliding doors, fusuma. Subjects were often Japanese landscapes or scenes from literature like Genji.
And beautiful crafts as well.
Oh, yes. Maki lacquerware was highly prized, sprinkling gold or silver powder onto wet lacquer to create these incredibly intricate designs on boxes, furniture, things like that. Very distinctively Japanese aesthetic.
Calligraphy also changed, didn't it? Moved away from the Tang style.
It did. A softer, more flowing, cursive style called Weiyo developed, more suited to writing kana alongside kanji.
And there were famous masters. The Sanseki.
Yes, the three brush traces, Ono no Tofu, Fujiwara no Sari, and Fujiwara no Yukinari. They are celebrated for perfecting this elegant Japanese style.
Even clothing changed.
It did. Again, moving towards styles developed in Japan, though still showing continental influence. For court nobles, men's formal wear was the sokutai, or ikan. More relaxed wear included the noshi, or karijinu.
And for women, the famous layered robes.
That's the jinihido, the 12-layered robe, though the number of layers varied. That was the most formal attire. For less formal occasions, something like the kochigi, highly colorful, complex ensembles reflecting status and season.
So it really permeated every aspect of life, this shift towards a Japanese style.
It truly did. From the way they wrote and prayed to the houses they lived in, the art they admired, and the clothes they wore.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the Kokufū culture of the 10th and 11th centuries, it was this pivotal time where Japan really began to define its own cultural identity.
Definitely. You had this turning inward after the intense period of learning from China, the development of kana opening up new literary worlds.
The profound impact of Pure Land Buddhism shaping beliefs and art.
And unique Japanese styles emerging in architecture, painting, calligraphy, crafts, clothing. It really laid the groundwork for so much later Japanese culture.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It really makes you think, how much does developing your own way of writing, like kana, actually shape a whole culture's ability to express itself, to find its own voice?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. Are there parallels in other cultures where language innovation kick-started a unique cultural flowering? Something to think about.
We hope this deep dive into that early Japanese cultural flowering has been insightful for you.
Until our next exploration of Japanese history,